but just so you know, you're by joining in the meeting here, you're okay with being recorded. We're gonna try really hard keeping track of chat. Either way, type your questions in the chat. Also, I'll try to leave a lot of space if you just want to jump in and raise your hand and ask a question there. Either way, we'll try to get to as much stuff as we can. Certainly, just type in the chat. One of us will keep a running log. I've got a couple questions that came in email that folks couldn't join today, so we'll get to that stuff too. Yeah, so again, just kick it off by saying thanks to everybody for supporting the program over the years, and looking forward to another round here opening August 1st. We'll start taking applications. The new packet is available. We've emailed it out to everybody. It's also available on our webpage. Certainly, if you're listening to this and haven't gotten any of that stuff yet, please let us know. We'll get it to you as soon as we can. So without further, well, wait, I'm sorry, I'll back up here. Let Nicole and Colleen introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Bloom. I started with the Conservation Commission in February of 2024, I guess now it's been. So most of you probably know who I am, but if not, I've been here for about a year and a half now.
Hi, I'm Colleen Limbert. I started with the SEC in November of last year, so I'm looking forward to working with you all.
Yeah, great. Okay, well let's kick it off here. Is there any questions in the chat yet?
Let's see. No questions in the chat yet. So maybe we'll go through the ones that we got emailed first and then give people a chance to type some questions in.
All right, I'll start off with that one from Dean about the equipment refurbishing, because that is a kind of confusing, or can be a confusing sort of a gray area in the program. Okay, so refurbished equipment, or old, I guess more accurately described as older equipment. Start off, the policy here is anything for no-till equipment, anything over 20 years old, purchased as is not eligible. Or the intent. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Uh-oh.
That's all right. Yeah, understood.
I'm gonna stop doing that.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so the policy, the intent of the policy there is to make sure that equipment is functioning well, that it has the best capabilities and the newest, better precision capabilities too out there. And to clarify, it's 20 years older, so that's model year 2005 and newer. It has to be to start with. And for nutrient precision nutrient application gear, that's 10 years. So we're looking at model year 2015 and newer. But let's stick to no-till planters and drills. That's what most folks are applying for. You really have three options. Number one is the easiest one to talk about, so I'll do that quick. If a piece of equipment is older than model year 2005, bought as is, no record of any work done to it, that is not eligible for credits anymore through REAP. Second option there is that piece of equipment older than 2005, it can be eligible for REAP tax credits if it's been refurbished, and I should qualify that by saying substantial refurbishment to that. So there has to be a record of that work done, and that work has to have been done by a qualified equipment dealer. So, for example, a farmer could buy an old piece of equipment from a neighbor, as long as that neighbor can, at the time of purchase, provide record of work that was done to that piece of equipment somewhat recently prior to that sale. That piece of equipment then could be eligible. That's option two. Option three is a little bit probably the most muddy, but it provides the most options for a farmer. A piece of equipment older than model year 2005 could be purchased and then taken to a qualified equipment dealer and refurbished. That original purchase price plus the cost of the refurbishment can be eligible. Now, important qualifiers, that work done, again, substantial refurbishment, we want to see some additional capabilities in terms of precision nutrient placement on that planter, if that's possible. But more importantly, that has to be done quickly at the time of purchase. Wording is 6 months or prior to the first planting season. So if a farmer, for example, a farmer goes out and buys let's call it 2001 John Deere planter in November. In January, takes it to Hoover's or something like that, gets a complete overhaul, adds some precision nutrient capabilities. The person could apply to REAP with those three things: the receipt for that old piece of equipment bought from a neighbor, maybe, and all the receipts from Hoover's for all that work done to it. So, looks like my video is freezing there, but can you all hear me still?
Yeah, we
Okay.
can still hear you.
Good. So those are your three options there for older equipment. Number one, obviously not eligible if nothing else is done to it. As is, not eligible. Second one, refurbishment, records of refurbishment can make that eligible. And number three, work done to refurbish an old piece of equipment can be eligible too. If farmers have specific questions about that, please have them reach out to us. I know that still there's a lot of room for gray areas and questions inside of that explanation, but the keys there, the commission, the intent of this guidelines for the commission is to make sure that equipment is really truly in good working order, and that it provides the best tool to the farmer to keep no-tilling and provide some additional nutrient move away from top dressing of nutrients. Any questions on that further?
I think, and if you want to ask a question, I had to mute everybody, so you need to unmute yourself first if you do want to ask a question. We could probably also add in there too, about the equipment refurbishing, that we're not talking about just maintenance. So we definitely need receipts from the dealer that did the work, and something that at least shows us that it wasn't just routine maintenance, that it was above and beyond, an actual refurbishing job, and not just, it's some of the coulters are older or something that, just needs to get updated, something minor. So we're really looking for, a paper trail that the equipment has been fully refurbished. We do have one question in the chat now.
Okay. Yeah, manure digesters. And sorry, I'm not sure who MCCD is. That Mercer County maybe, but
Montgomery, maybe.
yeah, sorry. The question is, what's the word on manure digesters being eligible? So manure digesters. Yeah, Mercer County. Thanks, Nick. Certainly, yeah. Right now, as is, parts of that system are eligible, and we had wanted to add, our hopes here at the commission were to get a bump in funding and be able to stop splitting hairs about parts of a manure digester system. But as you all know, REAP funding is really tight, goes really fast. So for this year, for 25 round, we did not expand the eligibility into digesters. Now, that just kind of keeps things in place as they always were, which means a lot of parts of that system are eligible. It just means that we in the commission and you as technicians sort of have to work with a farmer to split out some of those receipts. We're talking about waste storage parts of that system, the separator, and to clarify, that's a whole other issue in and of itself on separators. We're talking about like screw type manure solid liquid separators that would be used in that digestion system. Manure transfer pipes. So there's a good bit. Sorry, I don't really have a good example anymore because costs have gone up so high, but I guess some examples in the past is maybe out of that whole digester project, maybe half of it is eligible for REAP credits in the form of waste storage facilities, waste transfers, waste separators, waste separator facilities. So yes, now the cap for REAP has not changed, $250,000 in a lifetime. So if you want to go over and above that, which a digester project probably gets you there, a farmer is going to need to engage a sponsor, because if you all remember sponsorship, there is no cap. So sorry, that's a long answer on whether manure storage, or sorry, digesters are eligible for REAP. Yeah, as you can see, it's a longer, more complicated answer than I would like it to be. But parts of that project, short story is parts of those projects are eligible.
I'm going to try to share my screen again so I can show people where in the guidelines and some of this stuff actually is. So let me know if you guys can see that page. So you should be able to see attachment 2.
Yep, we could see it.
You can see it. Okay, thanks, Becca. So this is the section in the guidelines. This is attachment 2, page 13. This is where you can find that equipment age, 20 years or older that Joel was just talking about. So if you want to look back, if somebody's asking questions about that, this is where that's spelled out in the guidelines in attachment 2. And there's also equipment caps on this page. I don't know, Joel, if you want to go through the new caps since we're on this page.
Yeah, that's good idea. Just to reiterate, I mean, we've had those caps for several years. We've adjusted them this year. Again, most of it is in our attempts to get our $13 million of funding to stretch as far as we can and still hit as many farmers in the far-flung counties of the state, to help them out as best we can. So yeah, top one, most important there to farmers, $250,000 max. That's the cap. So in effect, to a farmer, that means the highest credit they can get for a no-till planter, no-till drill, what have you, is $125,000 of credits. That's not taking into account, the lifetime cap for REAP or anything like that. This is just eligible cost of a single piece of equipment, capped at $250,000. Now, a farmer could go out and buy a $400,000 planter. I'm sure many of your farmers are looking at those, or thinking about ordering them this summer. That's fine. It's just that the REAP eligible costs, we're going to stop at 250. That credit then for that farmer, regardless of the top price of that planter, is going to be capped at $125K for the REAP tax credit. That's the biggest one. And then take some of those savings, shift them to precision upgrade kits, where an older planter gets really overhauled. All those row units taken out. We're going to raise the cap of that to 100, and then 80. We raised that one for precision nutrient application equipment. That one was last year at 70. And then the final one there is for cover crop drones. That was 20 last year, and it's going to stay at 20. So those are the relevant caps for equipment that a farmer is going to hit. So yeah, that can start to get a little confusing for farmers, because we say 50% of the cost goes back to you. However, a lot of farmers are going to start to bump into those top caps on eligible costs.
Any questions about the caps? We do have a couple questions in the chat here too. We'll be jumping around on topics, but we've got a few in here now.
Well, yeah, I see one there on sponsorship. Yeah, I'll talk about that one quick. Okay, so REAP sponsorship, this is, and forgive me, some of the folks on the call, I'm sure, have heard me say this 20 or 30 times by now, but sponsorship's been around. It was part of the program since the inception back in 2007. Thought, envisioned as a way for private entities to really get involved in connections with the ag community and farmers. So in essence, to a farmer, sponsorship is where the REAP tax credits go directly to a third party, and the third party then pays the farmer in maybe a more easy to use form, and maybe it's a check or if it's a bank involved, the bank will lop off principal of a loan or something like that. But to be eligible for REAP as a sponsor, you simply the business, the individual, uh, what have you, that entity has to have some sort of PA tax liability, which that covers most people in the state. So, when folks call and say, who can be a sponsor? Well, it can really be almost anybody, bank, business, um, bank, business, trusts, individuals, whoever. It's wide open. Inside of that, I'll say banks are far and away the most common sponsor. The biggest sponsor we have by far is Sheets Incorporated. They sponsor a ton of projects every year with farmers, and they take the tax credits directly, use it against their corporate income tax. The farmer then gets reimbursed by Sheets for a percentage of the REAP tax credit. So let's run an example. And let me back up and say that the eligibility for the program is still the same. That farmer, even though they're not receiving the right REAP tax credits directly, that farmer still has to have all those plans, all those eligibility criteria that exist for REAP, that still exists in a sponsorship situation. It's simply the top name on that application is different. If it's a bank, let's say it's or Sheets Incorporated, that's the only thing different. The rest of the application is filled out the same as it always would have. The farmer goes about their business as they always would have. It's just that those credits go to a different third party instead of directly to the farmer. So, for example, if a farmer goes and buys a $100,000 no-till planter, gets sponsored by Sheets Incorporated. Sheets Incorporated would get 50% of that $100,000 planter, so they would get a $50,000 tax credit, and most likely they're going to pay the farmer then about $45,000 or somewhere around that ballpark. We here at the commission, we don't see the exact numbers that farmers and sponsors agree to. We just see a check mark that there is a financial agreement between the farmer and the sponsor. So, I say anecdotally, I see those numbers being about 90%, but that's kind of up to the sponsor. We would love to see a situation where an ag business, maybe a bigger company like Wise or Carnes or somebody like that steps up and sponsors these projects at 100%, and takes those tax credits and uses it as a way to really publicize their involvement in the local ag community rather than simply seeing it as a way to save money on their income tax. But it's helping the ag community one way or the other, whether those farmers are seeing a little bit less of a cut than the full on 50% in this situation that I explained there. So please, that's a top line explanation of sponsorship. we have a working list of sponsors that we regularly see. I would love to get more connections. If you in the conservation district world or anybody else out there has business connections, like I briefly mentioned Carnes and other food companies like that. Banks, we'd love to see banks in all different parts of the state being able to jump in and help their farmers out in this way with the REAP process. So I'm sure there'll be more questions on sponsorship. I'll just pause there and maybe move on to a different topic. What do you think, Nicole? Do you have something else you want to jump in on, or Colleen?
Not on sponsorships, and no, I don't have anything.
Oh, I see there's a follow-up question about that. Does a farmer typically reach out directly to a non-bank sponsor, or are districts and NCC making these connections? Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that typically it's the farmer making those connections. It's typically a farmer or or maybe a contact that the farmer has at Horizon Farm Credit or something like that to make those connections. We here at the commission, we certainly are always keeping our ears open and eyes open for opportunities like this. anytime a farmer calls me, I can give them ideas and try to make those connections. But typically, it's a farmer having made a connection somewhere in there. There are several brokers that will help farmers make those connections too. But typically, it's hard for me. It's hard for the three of us to really make all those connections for farmers, rather than it's a little easier, works a little better for a farmer to use their contacts that they already have with the feed supply company, with the dealership, with the bank, the connection that they already have in their ag communities. That seems to generate other connections. Certainly, anytime it's somebody new to that system, have them reach out to me. I can certainly explain the situation. We've found great success with that, with new sponsors, new banks, new businesses. As soon as one of the three of us has a chance to explain that scenario to a sponsor and a farmer, walk through that process with them, give them examples, it usually results in a good relationship between a sponsor and a farmer. So yeah, I know that's not much of an answer. That's not a real direct answer to your question there. We try our best. I guess I'll leave it at that. It's a mix of both. We keep a good record as best we can, but we also rely on the farmer to do a little bit of legwork. Always appreciate it when districts are finding connections like that for farmers too.
I just wanted to add in that, Abigail, from your question, I have a farmer in your area that just reached out. And, we discussed his project and what he had completed and what he needed to finish. And then I was able to provide him with a sponsorship, and a phone number for him to contact that sponsor, and then leaving our emails open so that he can get back to me, if there's any more information he needs from us to help start that sponsorship. All right, there's another question in the chat, if we're ready for that. I think I might be frozen, but that's okay. The question is, does a project building new barns also have certain components qualify? For example, heavy use protection, erosion control plans, manure management components, or are there more components?
Ooh, that's a good question. Go ahead, Colleen. You want to take a crack at that one first, since you worked on that part of the form, that page. Oh man, what is that? Page 4 or 12. Is that right?
Yeah. Do you want to bring that up, Nicole?
Yeah, I will. 12. Give me a second here. I gotta switch my screens. You want the actual application, page 12,
Either one.
or the presentation?
Probably the presentation. So I think what you're asking, there looks like there's two parts. So the first part in our presentation is, yes, we do want to see combined BMPs, working together, so you don't have to take forever to write the application. But as far as new barns itself is not covered. Right, actually, Joe, would you mind clarifying that? I'm not sure I'll use the clearest words.
Yeah, right. That's always, back to when I started in 13, that's always been a sticky question. We here at the commission, we want to leave it open for farmers to go over and above and to expand their operations and plan ahead. So yes, the quick short story is, yes, there are credits available to farmers building new facilities. However, it gets a little bit dicey, or a little bit more complicated in that, just looking at this sheet here in front of us that Colleen prepared here, we do need to see some information about numbers, expansions, because that expansion policy says, like, yes, you can still get REAP tax credits for for a project over and above what's in your Ag E&S plan, for instance, but it's going to be at a reduced rate. If you're expanding your herd out over and above 25%, that's going to result in a reduction of what you're eligible for. And I know in the question there you said the B word, barns. You know what we're really talking about are, you mentioned it too, the heavy use area protection elements, the waste storage facility elements, any building that has, you know, stalls and permanent sides, that's looked upon as a barn. And yeah, that is a red line. Any kind of permanent animal housing like that with stalls and permanent walls, that is considered a barn and is not eligible. Yeah, I mean, in reality, we all kind of know there's plenty of gray areas too. The intent of the commission there is to focus on established operations that have issues. Those folks are going to get the most funding. However, expansions are still part of that process. Improving situations, whether they're truly bad or not, is part of that process. We just need folks to really focus on this page. Page, oh man, 12 of the application there, that storage facility, heavy use area. Please, we need context. We need context to these process. Colleen, you want to jump in on that any more about
Yep.
this specific form here?
Sure. So for the form itself, like Joel was saying, the pre-construction, post-construction is extremely important because that is just a really good signifier if they are doing an expansion. But then the biggest part that we wanted to add to this is the project narrative. One of the hardest things for us to do is to try and figure out what the project is. So if you know, we're asking for the farmer, or, you know, if you're helping them fill out the application, to you know, what's the resource concern and how is it being solved, would really go a long way, because a lot of times we have to do a back and forth, as you know, with the farmer or with the conservation or a TSP, and that just takes more time. You know, sometimes we really just don't know what's going on, and farmers can be very hard to get a hold of if they don't like to use computers too much. And sometimes that results in a denial, and that's, you know, not what we want to see. So on this page and with the new application, the most important parts are post-construction and project narrative. Thank you.
Yeah, I saw one other element of that question there I want to circle back on, erosion control plans. So getting into that a bit, you know, those infiltration basins, I guess maybe that's often a situation we see receipts for a new building and then an infiltration pond that's required by the township or what have you in the local area. That is not eligible. Those one or two practices. However, if it's a, you know, a roofed heavy use area that is part of the conservation project, yeah, that is so that is going to be eligible. So that can get pretty muddy for, yeah, that's a play on words, I suppose. But if it's a new barn, a new infiltration basin, that is not going to be eligible. However, if it's a conservation BMP that is eligible, then parts of that basin are going to be eligible too, and we will prorate that. But I saw that in your question there about erosion control plans. That's different than Ag E&S plans. Ag E&S plans obviously are always eligible, but those erosion control plans, site prep and pad prep plans for new construction, that stuff is not eligible for REAP. So again, you know, anytime you have specific questions inside that, contact one of us. We'll get you better answers, especially if a farmer is to the point where they've gotten like cost estimates, and we can talk specifics with a farmer at that point.
Any more questions on that? There's a new question in the chat about equipment. No? Okay. So the question is, can a farmer split a piece of equipment and have a portion of it sponsored and a portion of it awarded to the farmer directly?
Right, that's a good question, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm dominating things, but these questions about the credit issuance stuff, they're always the trickiest, so I understand here. Um, no, we don't want to. We need to work and keep a project as one credit. Now, I say that there are a few instances where we have in the past, but at all costs, like we don't want to be splitting those credits between two different entities. We need to keep track of things. One project, one credit associated with that, whether it's sponsored or a farmer. Department of Revenue has been pretty sticky about that too. Yeah, I understand that's maybe not the most convenient thing for a farmer and sponsors, but for administrative sake here at the state and the commission and Department of Revenue, we need to keep those projects one to one.
That's all the questions we have in the chat right now. I don't know if there's another section that we can go over if anybody's wanting more information on a specific section of the application or specific section of the guidelines. Any areas that are just a little confusing still, or you wanted more clarification?
Do you want to take Nicole? You want to take a couple minutes and talk about cover crops? Any changes and specifics there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just going to share my screen again here. So we had quite a few changes for cover crops this year. There was a whole section in the presentation about that. The main, I guess, idea with most of these is that we're trying to incentivize planting cover crops and also sort of gearing towards multi-species cover crops and also towards using cover crop rollers and crimpers. So you'll notice a change for some of the items that were already eligible for 90% reimbursement for the 90% rate, but they were listed as only in an ag impaired TMDL. So we've expanded some of that, and we're basically looking at the entire state as an ag impaired area, and not going to be as specific with needing, the actual watershed to be listed in a TMDL. So for example, number one on this slide that you're looking at is for consistent reimbursement rate for cover crop rollers. So this increases, we're trying to increase the use of cover crop rollers, crimpers. So anywhere in the state, if somebody applies for one of these, they can get that full 90% reimbursement rate. Same thing for multi-species cover crops, doesn't have to be in a specific TMDL that's listed. Anybody applying for multi-species cover crops can now get that 90% rate. One other difference, kind of a major change with cover crops is the overall, if you look at the guidelines, there are several sort of caps on different parts of cover crops. A certain amount for planting, certain amount for the seeds, but overall the cost of cover crops, the most that anybody could be eligible for is now capped at $70,000. So if somebody has spent, $100,000 on cover crops, that's going to get capped. That overall cost is going to get capped at 70. We took out a few things just for clarification. We had we amended the guidelines on harvesting anything that's mechanically harvested for grain, forage, hay, straw. any of that, that's not eligible. Grazing is still permitted, but mechanical harvesting is not, those are not permitted. We took out broadcast seeders completely. Those are no longer eligible. I think it was sort of a gray area before. We didn't have that clearly stated that those are not eligible. And another big one. Oh,
Can I
sorry.
just jump in real quick with one thing that might come up as a question, a follow-up question about
Mhm.
what you just said there on mechanical harvesting. So yeah, to reiterate, any harvesting for grain has always been makes the cover crop not eligible for reap now, and that includes harvesting for forage. If a farmer, or usually a dairy or something like that, is chopping whatever, putting it in a bag or up in the silo, that's not considered a cover crop now for reap, and it's not eligible for tax credits. However, what I'm anticipating is a question there. If a farmer applied last year based on those numbers and has 3 years approved for them, that's still valid. They can send in receipts. They got approvals for that last year. We're not going back in time and retroactively taking away credits that we already approved for farmers. So yeah, it's going to take a couple years for that to truly wash out of the system. But any kind of new application coming in, it cannot be mechanically harvested. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that just is sort of the idea that whatever the current guidelines are when you apply, that's what we're going to follow. So if something changes the next year that could possibly affect an application from the previous year, we're going to go by the guidelines that were current, whenever that farmer applied. And the last cover crop change that I was just going to mention was we had a lot of questions, farmers not wanting to have to transition to multi-species cover crops. So we had the rule that after 3 years of receiving credits for single species, then you would have to convert over to multi-species. So we've eliminated that, just with the realization that maybe not everybody, it's not really feasible for everyone to convert to multi-species cover crops. So this will allow more farmers to continue to get support for cover crops, and not have to, completely switch over after they, max out on those 3 years. They can continue to apply for single species after that. I have a question in here about drones. Are drones with spraying capabilities in addition to cover crop seeding eligible since termination is part of a cover cropping system? So drones with spraying capabilities are still eligible. The important part is that they do have the ability to plant cover crops. So that is still anything with drones, planting with drones. And the termination method is not really a concern if it's not being harvested. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, just to add one other thing to that. I mean, the commission's intent there with drones is certainly on the cover crop side. I mean, we need to see that drone having real practical cover crop capabilities, not just as an afterthought to a spray drone. But and that's sort of why we have that $20,000 cap in there, recognizing that it's really hard to split hairs and say what is a good cover crop capability or not. We have that $20,000 cap in there to kind of as a easier way to focus on part of that drone that we want to focus on. Just to answer a question that maybe you weren't even asking there about the termination. I mean, cover crop establishment is what REAP is paying for. I realize that's not really, you weren't really asking about termination costs as part of the reimbursement, but I'll just take this opportunity to say that, with anything, termination costs are not part of the cost of a cover crop. But to your point there, yeah, we're fine with spraying capabilities on the drone. as long as that drone has real life practical cover crop capabilities.
Yeah, and just to add, we do on the page 13, the cover crop worksheet that I'm showing on the screen now, we do ask about the termination, but that's more of, for us to know when, the method we're looking to, gather that data, but, we're looking for termination dates because we do need to do a certain amount of compliance checks on the cover crops in the spring or in the, in late winter or spring. So, as we're going through and trying to pick farms out to go look at the cover crops, then it's helpful to know, what our deadline is for that and when your cover crops are going to be terminated. So the most information that the farmer can give us on that cover crop worksheet, that really helps us to know, what we're paying for and what their procedures are, and helps us at least administratively on the tail end when we have to do the compliance checks. Any other questions about cover crops? We want to go through any of these other changes from this year?
I just wanted, Nicole, can you go to slide 23, please?
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to cover, the grouping of these BMP practices. You can definitely use attachment 1 for that to make it easy. But just to point out that, if you have your heavy use with your manure storage, separating those out helps because your heavy use might be covered at 75% if it's for an ACA treatment. So in this example that I put there, the farmer's getting an extra $1,800 of REAP credits because we were able to cover the heavy use at a higher percentage. That's the one thing I just wanted to point out. Because we do want to give them as much as we can to help them. That's all I have with that, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the other thing to talk about real quick is receipts. Receipts are, well, we're always tracking them down. So I guess one of the biggest things is that if you happen to know the farmer has, NRCS or ACAP money with their project, whether you're asking them to include it or you're including that paperwork, the summary sheet or the 1245, that goes a long way in helping us to go through these applications as quick as possible so we can notify people that they've been approved. It's just one of the biggest missing items we see is receipts.
Yeah, I guess that's a good segue into some of the administrative things that we're asking, just a little bit extra on the front end to kind of help us get through applications quicker, not have as many denials, because we have everything initially from the get-go. But what generally happens is we are reviewing these applications and then we have to, stop and reach out to the farmer, reach out to all of you, anybody who worked on the application, the signatures that are required, all of that stuff. So anything that's, can be provided on the front end. So as you're helping farmers complete these applications, making sure that they have, all of the information that is required in the application, any receipts that they have, their dealer certifications and all of the signatures that they're required, and making sure their plans are in place and all that stuff. So anything that can be provided on the front end is just something that will help us get through them faster, help the farmers, so then maybe they're bugging you less to hear if you've heard anything about their REAP application, you know, on the other end, and just, you know, cutting down on the back and forth of all the phone calls and emails that we go through after the applications are submitted, because, you know, there are a lot that do come in with, you know, with missing information. So sometimes it's a mystery. We have to kind of piece together, you know, what their project is, piece together what they had done, you know, some of the ones that aren't as straightforward. So some of the stuff that we provided in this presentation was really just going through to help all of you who are helping these farmers. You know, and we really appreciate, you know, the extra work that gets done, you know, to get these applications in and have them be complete. So, you know, some of that stuff specifically in this different sections, but section 2 is another area, the cost summary table that Colleen was talking about, and grouping BMPs together and getting receipts together. And then on the front end of the application is the section 2 area where I went through that in the application. And there are a couple changes I could probably point out from last year's application. It's arranged a little bit differently. So you guys are the ones that are, you know, signing off on these. So you see these, but we added last year, I had made a change, excuse me, that tended to get overlooked. And I think it was just the way I had it placed on the application. But on those section 2A and 2B where we need that verifier signature, we need to have the total number of acres listed in there. And I'm sure there's several of you that remember me reaching out and hey, can you put these acres on here? Because they were missing. And I think it was just located in a place that was just easy to miss on the page. But we've rearranged that a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see. And excuse me. And then we also added in on page 3 and page 2, there where these blue arrows are, there's actually a space for the farmer, for the operator to provide those acres as well. So we're doubling up on that, but it is really important that we make sure that we have a verification that they do have their plans in place for all of those acres that they operate on. I don't know if anybody has any questions about section 2 specifically for me while I'm talking about that. Nothing else has really changed as far as section 2 goes. It's pretty much all the same information.
Yeah, the intent there is the same, to, you know, work with farmers to get those plans they need to make sure they're all up to date and implemented. And that's the questions are all set up. Farmer is going to answer questions about those plans and about the state of their operation, and you, the verifiers, are going to verify that that information is true. That's always been the intent. That is the same. You know, we want to keep farmers working with you as best as possible. The last thing we want to see is a farmer say, no, I don't have plans, therefore no, I can't even approach the district and get help with other things. We want to be part of that process and helping a farmer, you know, provide those incentives for to keep working through there. Anything else in section 2? I had one thing I wanted to circle back on in section 3, but
just one other thing with section 2, I had somebody bring this up to me the other day. On section 2B, question 3, if the farmer does not have any livestock or import or use any manure on the operation, then they're saying no to that question. Then, you know, they don't need to fill out the rest of that page because that is related to having livestock and importing manure. But somebody had asked me the other day about if you're signing off here on page 4 about that section and the operator does not have any livestock or use manure, then how many acres are you supposed to put in that verification spot? I actually told them that, you know, that was kind of one of the gray areas where it's a case-by-case situation. So if I see that you have answered no to that other question, that the operator doesn't have any livestock or use manure, and you put NA in there, or you put 0 or whatever, it's still going to be it's still going to be accepted because I'm going to take it as that you're looking at it from, I answered no to that question, so I don't have anything that's relevant in this section. But also, if you just put the same number that you had on the first section, that also would be fine, I think. I don't know, Joel, do you have a different opinion on that at all?
No, that's great. I hadn't even thought about that. That's very true.
Yeah,
I guess that's a good point. Good place to insert here that, the three of us here, we try our very best to um, answer questions and get things figured out. I mean, it's very rare that we get an application and we just, well, this isn't right, and toss it aside. Once an application comes in, it's in our queue in order. We work with farmers as best we can to answer any questions we have. So the point being, if you have questions like that, if you're not sure about how to answer things like that, a farmer can feel comfortable sending it in, and as a last ditch, we're going to reach out to the farmer. We'll reach out to you, the technicians, to get those questions answered. It should be a very low fear that if you answer something incorrectly, we're just going to throw it away in the trash can. That's not going to happen. So, yeah. All right, and I'll take a second here about section 3 with those, page 6, where you're putting in proposals for BMPs and then certifications on the BMPs post construction. We don't want to see you, a technician or whoever, a farmer, doing redundant work. If you've got certifications from another program, maybe EQIP or ACAP has done that for you, great. Send that in. Don't worry about the page in our application about certifications. Same with page 6, where you're putting in line items and cost. If you've got another program involved that already did that and has things listed out, just send a copy of that to us. That's totally fine. I don't want to create redundant work. And the last thing I'll say about that is on page 6, we don't want to see somebody splitting a project into 20 different line items. We want to see the big picture here. We're talking about a waste storage, heavy use area protection project. Just give me those top numbers. We'll figure out the units later as best we can. But the last thing I want to see is farmers and technicians and anybody else putting in redundant, painful work. We will try our best to answer those questions after the fact.
Greg has a good question in the chat. Says, how are applications handled from the previous year that missed funding, and/or are you starting to only accept applications on August 1st?
Yeah, good question. Okay, so applications that came in that were good, that were eligible, the farmer was eligible, the project was good, they get rolled over. They're first in line here already, starting from our new 2025 round. They'll get funded. And forgive me, I didn't, when we sent out that 2024 report with everybody listed in your county as having, that does not show those folks. Those folks that got rolled over where their application came in too late or we were out of money or whatever, those are people who are going to be on 2025. So I just want to make sure that, I'm sure you have a lot of people who are asking, or maybe you didn't see them show up on that report. They could be, it's likely they're already in fine. Greg, second part of your question there about August 1st. Yes, August 1st is the start. It's just gotten too big for us to handle applications that come in prior to that August 1st. So new applications, reiterate to your farmers, don't send that in to us until August 1st. I mean, we just can't, it's just not fair to people who are waiting to August 1st. If you have people jumping in line and sending them to me on July 15th or what have you, send them to Nicole and Colleen too. So yeah, we'll do our best, but we really appreciate if you just stress and reiterate to farmers August 1st.
No, are there any other questions? Something you want covered more?
And I will send out, we have a recording of this video, so I will send that link out to everybody afterwards too. So if there's anything you want to go through again and listen to, it'll be on here. If you have any other questions, otherwise, you can always, just reach out to us as well. If you watch the initial video again and think of something that you didn't think of today, just let us know.
Yep, I'll just close out on some boring administrative stuff. We're expecting quite a flood of applications here on August 1st, so it's going to be till we get through that tidal wave here. Farmers might be out 6 weeks till they hear anything back from us. So just make sure, if farmers are asking, just we'll get to folks as quick as we can. Send them emails to say that we got your application, but it might be another 6 weeks till we can really unpack it, depending on the amount of stuff that comes in here on August 1st. So, yeah, without any other further questions, reiterate what Nicole said. Just send Colleen, Nicole, and I questions if you have them. Looking forward to the new round here. Again, I appreciate all your assistance, your help in administrating the program. Yeah, without anything further, I'm sure we'll cross paths again. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.